Hello and welcome to episode 14, I think, of the Homes WTF podcast. That's Homes Where to Focus. We're going to jump into our episode here in just a few minutes, and it's going to be all about water today, which will be interesting. But I want to start with just a little bit of a hot take. I've talked about things like this before, but one thing I really like about Zillow is studies that they do that are nationwide that give us access to a lot of information. Fascinating study that I read that Zillow conducted was all about the color of your front door. What front door color has the best impact on value? If you're trying to sell your house, what front door color has the best impact on value? And I don't normally open it up during our hot takes, but quick, what do you guess is it, Jason?
Red.
Rhonda? Red? Wrong.
Wrong.
Fine.
Black or charcoal gray
My next was black.
Have the best impact on value of your home, thousands of dollars above expected price when you have those two colors specifically. And as a bonus, I'll tell you the worst color that you can paint your door is a light chalk pink.
I was going to say pink.
Why didn't you tell me when we listed it and had a red door,
color.
man?
Red is good, but
So this is producer Tim chiming in. In Scotland, when you pay your house
Yes.
off, you're red. You don't have to, but you usually get a red door to indicate my house is paid off.
there's a lot of traditions about paying off your house. Red door is one of them. Here in the United States, putting an eagle somewhere on the exterior of your house is freedom. In fact, the whole idea of a housewarming came from the idea that originally, when mortgages were much less than the 30-year period, when you paid off your mortgage, you would have a party over at your house and you would burn your mortgage documents in the fireplace, and it was a housewarming because I finally owned my home myself.
How about that?
So there's a lot of traditions surrounding
Warming up
that.
that crib.
But let's not spend all of our time talking
hot
about
takes.
weird little random real estate facts that I could talk about forever. And let's talk about today's episode, water. Where does it come from and where does it go? We're all
They're
staring
all
at Jason.
staring at me.
Waiting. We're going to talk all about water today. Specifically things like, do you have city water? Do you have well water? That's where does it come from? Where does it go? Do you have sewer? Do you have septic? We want to talk about these things a little bit. A lot of people maybe don't understand how some of this works. So let's start with where your water comes from.
Okay, so they're waiting for me to say a specific saying that goes with where does it come from? Where does it go? How many of you know out there what that comes from?
Everybody knows. Where
I don't
that
know. There
All
might be
singing
some.
it in their heads.
Yeah, right. Singing it right. Yeah, everybody's singing Cotton Eye Joe right now, right?
Yes.
Yeah, of
Yeah,
course.
So there we go. So
There's
that's
a reason we named the episode that. There was all
Exactly.
kinds of ways to introduce
was.
this
There
idea of water, and we landed on a specific one because when we were having our prep session,
Right.
we just fell into it.
where
and,
does it come from? Where does
Not
it
fell
go?
in the water.
Where does it come
and
from?
we
Cotton
couldn't
Eye
get
Joe.
this out of our head, right? So,
Right.
all right. So
Okay,
water.
so let's start with it. Okay.
So all water starts right as groundwater. Okay, whether you're getting your water from the city or from a well, it all starts as groundwater. Yeah, we agree with that.
Yeah.
Okay.
Starts in the clouds, Nat.
Well, it starts in the ground, really.
Well,
it has to evaporate
to
up in the
evaporate up
clouds
and
and
then
come
come
back
down.
down.
Right, gotcha.
Mm,
But
we
the
don't
Earth's
have to get
not
all
really
super
recreating
scientific.
it. It's just recycling it.
Correct. We're not making any more water anywhere.
It's the same water the dinosaurs had.
Sure, yeah.
Dinosaur piss.
Oh, nice.
Yes.
Producer Tim was muted for that one. I don't know if you heard it in the background, but okay. So there's two main sources of water for a house. One is the well water, and one is the city water. You guys want to talk about what you like and why, or give us some education about one of those?
So let's talk about, like, we have a current situation in our whole geographical area right now being a drought, right? So one of those things, water, where does it come from? Wells. So we actually have people that wells are drying up, and stuff like that's happening right now. So a lot of people say, yeah, I'd never have a house or any kind of property unless it had a well on it. Well, what if your well runs dry? With city or some type of government water, public water that comes to you, it's good probability it's not going to run out.
Yeah, there's pros and cons to that independence of well water, right?
But I don't have a bill.
So people say that a lot. Well water is free, but is it really free? Because you have to pay for filters, you have to maintain your equipment. If your pump fails, you have to replace it.
No, I don't have to pay the city.
Well,
You don't have a monthly.
you're
bill.
paying more for the electric company though.
Yeah, you don't have a monthly bill for your well water, other than a little bit of electricity. That's a good point.
Got some
But
electricity
There
going
are
out.
costs associated with a
There
well.
are.
It's certainly cheaper than municipality water,
Right.
but there
Not
are
always-
costs. It's not free.
Right, and it's not always better. Some people have to add tons of additives to keep their well drinkable. Mm-hmm. You know, there's so many factors in it, and what it's going to do to the insides of your house. If it's hard water, if it's something like that, got a bunch of minerals in it and stuff. That's how you see the spots on glass and it tearing apart. Right now I've got a house. It's crazy because the water is actually destroying the tile that we laid in the shower.
Yeah, you talked about that. And then the etching away of the pipes and things like that. That's true.
I want to talk about that specifically for a minute because I think there's some misconception about what is hard water. And you just said it. You just talked about what hard water does. I think some people think hard water is bad for them, but what you're saying is really it's bad for your house more so than it is for you.
Right. I mean, I guess maybe I'm not
My
a
hair doesn't
statistician.
like it.
Right. But there you go. Women don't like it because of their hair. And then you add the water softeners, and then they don't like that either because then it feels like you're never rinsed off.
I love a water softener.
Oh, God, I can't stand them. But so it's not actually bad. I guess long term with the minerals, it would matter more if you had like heavy metal type stuff than you would get, because you're going to absorb that. Not the kind of heavy metal that our producer loves, right? So, but the other kind. So
hard water is just water that has a far above average amount of like minerals.
Mineral
High
deposits,
concentration.
correct.
So you'd want to get a lot of testing done, a lot being periodic. You want to make sure that you're checking it and not just saying, "Oh, it was good when I put it in." And then
like you don't want to
keep
drill
moving
a
on.
well and then 30 years later check it. I mean, you should check it every few years at best. I would say. I don't think there's really there may be some type of hard color set. You should check it every 2.5 years. But I would just personally, just because of that. So drought period, right? So water tables are going up and down. So that water that's in your well is going up and down as well. So it may be at a point, where it's because your pump for your well is up higher. It's not all the way down at the bottom of your well. It's up higher.
Right.
So it's sucking water that comes from a pretty decent area consistently. But when you drop, you could get more contaminants from that coming in when we have these droughts and stuff that you normally don't have. Mm-hmm. So, you just kind of have to be aware of those kind of things. But so well versus any kind of public water, public water, like I said, you usually don't have that.
So where's the public water coming from?
Oh man, so public water comes from your local cities and stuff like that. They basically pump water into a treatment type plant, and a lot of times your sewer water is turned right back into your drinking water through those plants. So,
I feel like most of the time the treatment of the sewer water goes through the step of just being used for like watering and things like that. And it goes back
Yes.
into the ground.
Right.
But what they are pulling into those treatment plants that are going into your house is groundwater.
groundwater.
Reclaimed water.
Eventually your wastewater will find its way back, but after it's been cycled through
Right.
the earth for
Right.
however long it takes to come back around.
And then so with having that and having that public type of water, they treat the water supposedly, right? So you hear about instances all over the place where this company, this little community did something wrong and there's problems and it happens. It just depends on, just like anything else, who the people working in that water treatment area, right? But most of that water is already treated. It's got chlorine in it. It's got, they've taken out a lot of the hard materials and the heavy metals and stuff like that. But they do add to it, So there's people out there, that you've got it's chlorinated. It's got fluoride in it, and a lot of people are against that. So your well water's not going to have those things in it. But you're going to have water. You're going to have water all the time, and it's going to be a consistent flow most of the time.
arguably better water pressure too.
Right.
I mean, you can get good water pressure out of a well, but again, you go back to that cost of equipment.
I picture Little House on the Prairie with pumping out there to get the water pressure going.
Yeah, and that has a lot to do with it, with the water pressure for wells. A lot of builders and stuff put in the very bare minimum, and it's a whole discussion that you can have on that kind of stuff as far as the little blue tanks that you have at your house and what the pressure regulators are and everything else. But they put the bare minimum in on those things. And when you, in my work, when you change some of those things, sometimes the stuff doesn't flow like it did before because the new technology of faucets and stuff like that don't support that. And you get a lower water pressure even more so with it coming out.
And what if you have a house that was built in the 80s or 70s and now you want to do those higher pressure faucets? Are you doing damage to your pipes because they've been running at a lower pressure?
Well, depending on your pipe.
Right?
You know, I mean,
Worth
there's
asking,
so
though,
many
before you
different-
just do it?
Oh, yeah, for sure. Yeah. I mean, you want to have them look at it, and in a good contractor, somebody's going to look at those kind of things. Like, and you're going to know sometimes when you go into a house, hey, it's from the 70s, you're going to have certain things that are in it versus a house from the 90s, you know? So, and most contractors will know that, you know, some don't, and then some people have had it changed. And if they've had it changed, they'll tell you because they know, right?
So there's pros and cons to each well or city water. I would say for me personally, they're not different enough that I would ever personally make a home decision based off of that fact alone. Whether it has well water or whether it has city water doesn't matter to me enough to change my mind about a house. But it is important to understand the differences between them. City water is arguably more expensive because of the monthly bill, but I would say definitely much more reliable overall. The well water is going to be cheaper in the long run, but requires more personal maintenance and focus from you. With that freedom and independence comes some extra responsibility, like the testing of your water and maintenance of your systems and things like that. So let's spend a few minutes talking about where water goes. And after you have taken a shower or cooked or drank water out of the faucet and things like that. Where does your water go, and what's really the difference between sewer and septic? I find as an agent, I have a lot of buyers who really question septic systems. They think it's an old, outdated thing. It means old house. It means bad house or, very rural house, and that's not very true. Septic systems are, of course, still built and used all over the place today when you're not in a position to connect directly to the infrastructure of the nearby city. So let's talk about that a little bit.
Okay. So it's going to go out either into the sewer or the septic.
Mm-hmm. Once it leaves the house, it goes to one of those two places.
And it could be just like kind of like a well too. So there's one more factor in both of those. So you have a public water system, you have a public sewer system, you have a private well, and you have a private septic. Some communities have a public well for the community, and the same thing with a sewage type system. It goes to one treatment plant. So there's that third factor in there too. But the septic thing, I'm doing an addition for a house right now, and it has a septic system. You know what I mean? And it's only a 10-year-old house, but they're everywhere. It doesn't mean old. It can mean rural, I think, because the outreaches of your public utilities getting out there to be able to run those lines, it's very expensive. That's one thing, public utilities for water and stuff like that isn't a lucrative business, really. I mean, it's very expensive. You've got to secure land. There's all different things you have to do to be able to run those public water and septic and sewer lines. I mean, we do have a cost in that. Now, when you've got a septic system, you go back to the well. Are you paying for your wastewater to go somewhere? Nope. It's going into your own private area of wherever that may be. But you do with utilities. A lot of times, you're paying for sewage. You're paying some type of fee that will go along with your water bill because they have to, treat that water. So there's work that goes into that.
Yeah, so my house was built in 2017, and I have a septic system. Mm-hmm. So they're still very commonly used. Personally, I'm a big fan of septic systems. when it all breaks down, they're exceedingly simple. All of the drain lines in your house end up in one tank called a settling tank, where essentially everything settles. Anything that's more solid goes to the bottom where it can slowly decompose, and the liquids stay on top. They pass through into the liquid tank, which is a second tank right next to it. And from there, they pass through a little filter out into what's called your leach field. Your leach field is several hundred feet, depending on the size of your septic system, lines where the water just runs out into them and then seeps into the ground, where eventually it will find its way back into the city water supply.
So now I'm
Wherever
sitting
it
in my
goes.
car and I'm thinking, what about the guy who has the well and that line is right next to the leach field?
So by law, the
can't
well
be.
and
I
septic
know,
have
I'm
to be
just
a
saying.
certain amount of feet apart when they're constructed. They can't be put right next to each other. But just like with your well, your septic system does require, I would say not maintenance, but proper use. A lot of people think, well, whatever, if I flush it down the toilet, it's fine. That's not correct. The first step of that septic system is that the settling tank, right, where your solids settle to the bottom. Those solids need to be things that can break down to liquid over time. Toilet paper is fine. That will break down. Flushable wipes, often no, are really bad for a septic system. Feminine products, very bad for your septic system. You don't want to flush those down the toilet. You don't want to put coffee grounds down your sink. A lot of newer homes will have a septic system with a garbage disposal in the sink, and that's a little bit of a trap because it encourages you to maybe put things you're not supposed to put down there. Don't pour oil down your drain.
Eggshells, water, or
eggshells,
potato
yeah.
peels.
So be careful about what you put into your septic system. They can go a long time without you ever having to touch them if you treat them right. If you mistreat them, it means you're going to have to pay to have it pumped quite a bit more often, probably.
Right. Yeah, because it's not going to go into the leach field tail lines. And there's several type. That's a basic septic system. There's tons of them out there that require a lot more additional parts. And it just basically depends on the lot and how the drainage goes and all that stuff. So they can be very, very expensive. And when you're doing an addition or something like that, sometimes you won't get approved to do that addition because you don't have enough area to be able to expand that. And I think you've ran into something a couple of times, I'm sure. The one that we're doing right now is kind of that way. So we had to make the addition different to be able to fit the septic system that was going to be there.
The permitting for septic systems now requires, when you're building a new system, the land that you're on has to be able to support 2 full systems in order to get the permit. There has to be enough room for one system and then a repair area where you could rebuild your entire system if the first one fails. Failure is very rare where the entire field fails.
You usually have a couple lines at a time.
Yeah, but the reason they require that is because when you build a house that has a septic system, the operation of your house is dependent on that system working. Mm-hmm. If I no longer have a septic system, I no longer have a livable home because I have no sewer capabilities at all. So that's why the permitting requires. Essentially, if you build a house with a septic system, the land that you're building it on has to be able to support 2 full systems in case of total failure, which again is very rare, but having that repair area is vital because if I do end up in that rare situation, I don't want my house to become non-livable.
Yeah, so you'll see a lot of the what do we want to call cookie cutter neighborhoods or the houses that are really close together and stuff. None of those type of neighborhoods have septic systems in them. They're all on some type of sewer system, public sewer system, because they don't have the available space to be able to do anything like that. I mean, you don't have the available space to walk between them, much less have somewhere for your waste to go. So when you start talking about sewer systems, I think everybody tends to lean more towards having that because there can be some cost in a septic system because after 50 years in older houses, you're almost to a point where you're going to have to do some replacement unless somebody really took care of it, which even at that, you still may. Ground changes, everything changes, and that's where it goes. But with a sewer system, it's going out one way, it's going into the city right of ways and the city or public water, whoever does it, and it's going away to the waste treatment plant, right? So the only real thing that you see with a sewer system as far as it failing is when you go outside and you plant a tree in your front or backyard where that line goes through and the roots go through it and crushes the pipe after so many years, and then you have to have a plumber come out and put a new line in. So, but very minimal cost compared to doing repairs on a septic type system. It's a lot less expensive. So I see a lot of people definitely want to, lean towards that. And then you just get a lot of people that go, man, you mean to tell me that there's poop in my backyard? Well, do you have a dog? If you had a dog, that's worse poop than you're going to get from any septic system because it's in the ground. But,
Depends on what you're eating for dinner.
right. Don't want to put your garden over top of the leach fields. Or do
why,
you?
Why not? the
Good
grass,
fertilizer.
I can, in the summer,
Oh, you
especially in the drier
Yep.
days of summer, I can tell you exactly where my leach field is because that's where the
Exactly.
greenest grass grows.
That's right. That's where the
You can
best.
Isn't it
follow the
funny that
lines.
something that we take totally for granted? We expect water pressure. We expect water to come out of that faucet when you turn it on. How many gallons of water do you think people use on average in America per day?
Oh God, I don't know, but it's got to be a huge
I
waste.
know we're like the highest in the world
Yeah,
in
it's
terms
waste.
of daily use.
No
So
guess.
much waste.
What do you think?
I have
100.
80 to 100 gallons,
100 gallons.
per American.
God, I would say per
and we
person.
expect it. And it's just like, it's just going to be there when we turn it on.
Mm-hmm.
We don't even think about the fact that it's not going to be available to us.
Yeah, it's interesting to think about how much infrastructure goes into giving us access to that water, and here in the U.S., we're fortunate that Producer Tim, look up this stat and correct me if I'm wrong, but the United States, our geographical area, has something like 18% of the world's fresh water, despite having like 3% of the world's population. See if you can get that stat for me. We're blessed here. with
Water's the next
access
oil.
to fresh water.
Oh, it could be one day.
And I think we do take that for granted sometimes, but maybe this episode gives you a little bit of insight into where your water comes from and then where it goes once you're done using it, and the difference between those two major options, whether you're getting city or well, whether it's going to a sewer, going to a septic, things like that.
Yeah, and then it's crazy too with all the seawater. People go, we should just be able to. That process is huge to change that seawater to fresh water.
Desalinization.
Yeah, that's why it's not done that much. Do you think everybody on the coast, you got plenty of water out there? Yeah, okay. Well, then why don't they use the seawater?
Yeah. And one little thing when it comes to houses is pay attention to that water, where it's going and what it's doing. If you have small leaks, do not ignore them. Water will be an intrusive factor in your home if you ignore it.
Water on
Underground line breaks, pinhole leaks, like you
Water
have
is the
mentioned in
true
past.
enemy of any home.
For real. Roof leaks.
So the Great Lakes area hold about 18 to 20% of the world's fresh water, surface fresh water.
Well,
This area has about 9,000 miles of freshwater rivers. But if we wanted to go where all the fresh water is, that's Antarctica. 70% of the world's fresh water is in the glaciers of Antarctica.
as ice. Interesting.
Yeah.
Well, let's all just start mining water out of Antarctica, right? If that's the next oil.
Yeah, right. Oh, I don't.
All right. Well, let's wrap up this episode and wrap it up. I don't really have a wrap up question, so we'll just keep it real simple. Yes or no? Do you have a strong preference over city and well or septic and sewer, Jason?
Not really a strong preference over that. I don't. I'm going to end up probably where I'm going to have some type of well and septic just because of ruralness in land. But I don't have a preference really.
I prefer the city.
Okay.
Just for reliability, knowing that it's going to be there and just counting on it to be there.
Yeah. And as I said earlier, I don't think I have a strong enough preference that it would make me choose one house versus another. I think there's pros and cons to both, and that's fine. That's our conversation about water. Where does it come from and where does it go?
Tell me where you at, Cotton Eye Joe.
Next week, we're going to be talking about real estate investing. We're going to do like an investing 101, and we're going to have to cut me off before it becomes a 3-hour episode next week. So tune in to learn a little bit more about real estate investing next week. Thanks for tuning in this week. We'll talk to you next week. Good chat, everybody.
Good chat.
You have been listening to Homes WTF Podcast. Homes WTF Podcast is produced by Tim Beeman for Such and Such Media. The views and opinions stated on this podcast are solely those of the contributors and not necessarily those of our hosting or distribution companies. This podcast is copyrighted and cannot be used without express written consent of Such and Such Media.